Welcome everyone to a new edition of the Future of RevOps live show. We're gonna go live for 45 minutes today. We have the stellar presence of our friend Clay Expert, and she's gonna introduce herself. So Petra, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. We were just discussing that I'm running from meeting to meeting today. So yeah, been a very busy day, but hi everyone. Super happy to see some faces here, some that I recognize from LinkedIn. So if you don't know me, I'm Petra. I am a co-founder of a revenue operations and clay agency called Revenue Hoop. We work with fast-growing companies to help them systemize and accelerate their revenue growth. For me personally, before I started this agency, I worked for 10 plus years in revenue operations, holding different roles, started doing more customer acquisition, then doing demand gen, and then specializing in marketing ops, sales ops, and then revenue ops as an umbrella term. So I've really worked my way through companies in-house, understood the problems that revenue operations has and also sales teams have. And with that, knowledge and experience, I thought it was the right choice to go and start a revenue operations agency. And yeah, so that's me.
Thank you for the intro. Could you go over again to the type of client that you normally work on right now?
Yeah, I think that our type of clients are right now very diverse. So we're either working with companies that are very early stage, some of them even pre-revenue, and we are also working with companies that are post-IPO. So the use cases really differ. But typically we work with B2B companies that want to either shorten their sales cycle, improve pipeline quality, or scale faster and efficiently. And we do that, I don't know if I mentioned, but it is industry agnostic. So I can't pinpoint specific industry, but usually if you have a go-to-market problem and we're able to help you solve it, then that's usually what our ICP is.
So you need to scale and you're in the B2B space, you're a fit for Revenue Hoop.
Yeah, right? Come, knock on our door.
What do you think is like the main difference of the scope of work of a small company compared to like post-IPO company regarding the the implementation of AI automation for fast scaling those companies?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for early stage companies, especially if like they were founded recently in the last couple of years, they are more likely to take risk, let's say, or integrate new tools, AI tools. Like they want to know what's working right now and they want to implement it in order to scale quickly and just build the right foundation. So it's usually what we're doing with them is making sure that they are building the right go-to-market system for their goals. While if it's a company that's a bit more established, maybe post-IPO, it's usually that they have a very large sales team, like just, I guess it depends what's large is for different companies, but let's say 20 plus SDRs working on sales. And they have so many tools because, over the years, they've just acquired a lot of tools to help them run faster. And they have a lot of inefficiencies in their processes. So when they come to us, it's because they want to integrate modern technologies like Clay. They're like looking on LinkedIn, they're reading up. They know that they need to include these tools right now into their processes to make things more efficient, but they just don't have the internal skills. Or they have some people that are very like good revenue operational leaders internally, but they just don't have the bandwidth because, as we all know, revenue operation leaders are always pulled into so many different directions. So improving your go-to-market workflows is not always, the only project that you're working on internally. You're also helping customer success. You're also helping different teams. So it really differs in terms of the type of companies and at what stage they are. But I think at the end of the day, everyone's trying to do the same thing: is generate more revenue faster and more efficiently.
Totally. Great. I'm gonna send a message to the audience that We're going to save the last 10 minutes for questions. I forgot to mention that. So keep them, or you can drop them on the chat as well. So then we can go over them as Petra continues to illustrate us with her work. So in terms of accelerating revenue for a company using AI automations, what type of methodology do you guys use, or how do you guys start working with a client and making an impact in the short term?
I will say it depends on each client and each use case and what problem they're trying to solve. So we don't have like a one-size-fits-all kind of solution. But typically what we focus on a lot is strategy. So we start with strategy and scoping. The first week is definitely focused on scoping. So we're meeting with the team, we're meeting with people who are responsible for specific workflows that we're trying to optimize, and we're watching them go through their processes and we're taking notes. So let's say we're working on, like, a very common use case right now is optimizing or automating inbound management, outbound management, etc. What we're doing is kind of like watching how they're doing it right now manually, taking note of all of the frictions in the process, and then we recommend how we're going to eliminate those inefficiencies through automation. So whether you have an SDR jumping between 3-4 tools just to get one email address or one phone numbers, that's a very easy way to say, okay, we can set that up on Clay. Or whether, like, they're working through like 25-step sequences and we're like, no, this is too long and too much sophistication here. We need to optimize your sequence structure. Or for inbound, if, they're like having an SDR internally spending time just monitoring inbound leads to write them emails and try to get a meeting booked. We're scoping that process and how it's happening at the moment and trying to recommend optimizations. And then once we've done the scoping, we typically start immediately with execution. We try to show value quickly, because we know, like, if companies are coming to us for help, it means something is really not, it doesn't mean like it's really not working, but they want to see value quickly. And we want to show them that value very fast so that something's working now for them and we can like focus on the more long-term processes and improvements. We always say, crawl, walk, run. And I think a lot of people use that term, but we do that process where we do like crawl, walk, run approach.
What does that mean? Sorry, I ignore. What is that
Yeah.
phrase?
What does crawl, walk, run mean?
Yeah.
So the crawl phase is usually where, especially if you're changing something for a current team. So if you have a team that's already doing outbound and inbound in a specific way, and they've been doing it for years, and then we come in as an agency to help them automate that process, that's going to be a huge shock for the team internally, as well as like for the people who brought us in to work with them. We cannot just change things overnight. So the first weeks is about gaining trust and also, like, as I mentioned, doing the scoping and then building these small steps of automating very manual tasks so that the team starts seeing almost like a proof of concept of how automation is going to improve their workflow. So that's the crawl process. And then the walk process is taking, building on top of these solutions that we've built and maybe scaling them to a more important workflow. So if they have a playbook that is generating results for them, but it could generate a bit more results, the first month, we're not focusing necessarily on their top performing playbook, but the second month, we are implementing these new solutions and automations on their best performing playbook, because now we've gained the trust and they can see how we can now double or triple that playbook. And then for the third month, maybe we're expanding these processes and automations on every other process that they have internally.
Nice. So you're telling me that you guys act as sort of like an outsourced RevOps team for these clients. At what time, at what stage do you hand off, or how do you guys manage when a client wants to start managing RevOps internally? Do you guys have any like structured process for, I don't know, transitioning or like handing off the developments, or how do you guys approach that?
Yeah, I think so. We work with a lot of revenue operations leaders. They are the ones that usually come to us because Of course, they've done also internal scoping. They've done their research. Usually revenue operations leaders are very like detail oriented. They like are very, very diligent. So they've done their research. They know what needs to be done, and they just don't have the internal, let's say, knowledge or skills or even bandwidth to do that. So when they come to us, we're usually working by milestones. So if they have like these 3 huge milestones that they want to achieve, we set a timeline together for how we're going to achieve those milestones. And then that either ends up being like a one-time project, or we end up working month to month together. And this is what we usually see is after we've worked with teams, whether founders, revenue operation leaders, sales teams, we do end up, working on a more longer term together, because they want to continue having this knowledge. Many times we train the teams internally as well if this is something that they want to bring on in-house. As we're working, they're watching us work, and we share a lot of documentation and enablement material. So they're able to actually, follow that through and implement the same strategies. I would say that specifically with Clay, if you were to, after our project together ends, if you were to want to continue doing that in-house, as we're working, you really need to go in there. So if you're working at a company and you're hired an agency, you need to go into Clay and you need to test things and you need to work and you need to figure out what the agency is doing at the same time. I feel like sometimes people expect that maybe you hire an agency and they just give you documentation about how to do things and you're just going to go into Clay and know how to do it. But I think that you really need to try things for yourself and spend some serious time inside Clay and other tools.
Nice. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge to take over what you guys do, because it's such an expert management of the workspace. So yeah, it requires some upskilling of their team in case they want to continue operating it. How big is your team right now? Like how is your team structure? Like, do you guys have more RevOps professionals, or is just I know you're with Abby now. I don't know if she's here, but another outstanding RevOps professional. But like I'm not entirely sure about your team right now.
Yeah. So for everyone that doesn't know, Abby actually used to be my manager in another company, and she was my revenue operations manager, and now she's my co-founder, which is a huge win for me. But yeah, so shout out to Abby if she's on this call. In terms of our team, I think we're about like 7 or 8 right now. We're actively hiring and growing. But we're being very, picky about our hiring and about the roles that we're bringing on board. So we want like a wider experience of people who have knowledge in HubSpot, Salesforce, Clay, and other tools that like we usually support. They don't have to be, perfect at that. That's why we're here to coach them and train them. But because the type of work we do is not just Clay work, it's also like CRM integrations and enrichments. We hire people from these type of backgrounds. And then, in terms of structure, I can send you more information.
No, that's enough.
Trying to figure this out, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a challenge. What about any specific, I wouldn't say case study, but any implementation that you have done recently or like in the past months worth to highlight in this session? Something that you found like a really powerful, tangible outcome that you can, refer to, so then the audience can understand like a good example of it. It does. You don't have to like mention the company name. Sometimes, there's some confidential information, but maybe if you can illustrate us with some example.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of examples that come to my mind. I think personally, what I like to see usually is when we help companies save a lot of time that they are spending on non-revenue generating tasks. So if we can save at least, let's say 60% of an SDR's time during the week spent on just doing like this very manual, laborious process, that's a win for me. And that's what we usually see is we see someone spending 80% of their time on non-revenue generating tasks. And then by the end of our engagement, they're spending 70% of their time or 80% of their time actually like qualifying prospects, creating opportunities, replying to interested prospects, and not spending any minute going into any enrichment provider tool, into LinkedIn research, going on anyone's website. If they need to, they can, but it's usually a win when we can save that time. And we have a case study, I think, on the Clay website where we saved a company 140 hours per month spent on these type of tasks. And that inherently meant that they generated more revenue because they were able to increase their volume of outreach without increasing their headcount. And then with their current headcount, they were able to have them spend time on things that matter. And yeah, you can find that case study on the Clay website.
Awesome. When you go through that process, I'm curious how much of an impact it generates on the sales reps that are used to work on a specific way. They own their tech stack. They have like a whole routine, or maybe each one has its own, and they act like an isolated, sales unit. But how do you approach that cultural shift of taking back so many important roles or tasks that they perform, and how do you overcome that friction of modifying the way they work, in terms of individual aspect?
That's a very good question, actually. Enablement, internal team enablement is the biggest, the most important part of our entire project plannings usually. Whenever we're having sales conversations or we're starting to work with teams, one thing that we flag is enablement. We could build the best, most optimized processes. If the team doesn't use them, then it's like all gone to waste. So enabling teams is very important. We usually, have our own enablement processes, but also lean on the company that we're working with and the internal resources that we have, whether it's a sales enablement manager or it's a like revenue operations leader. We lean on them as well to be doing proper enablement internally with their teams. And I think, change management or like introducing new ideas, especially AI, is always a challenge for people. There's people who embrace change and there are people who are resistant to change. And that's just normal in everything in life. And this is where it gets like really important to figure out how to make everyone see the end goal. And I think usually what we see is that even if there's resistance at the beginning, which is why we do the crawl, walk, run approach, by the end of the project, usually the people who are the most resistant become the biggest champions and supporters and are coming up with new ideas. Because I'm pretty sure nobody wants to spend time, I don't know, finding contacts to reach out to. Everyone just wants to do the work rather than prepare for the work.
But at the same time, I bet, you get some love from the ones that believe in AI automations and Clay and these tools to make their life easier and multiply their revenue output. And then you have like top performers that work maybe the old way for our point of view, and they are in a comfort zone. They are making lots of money on commissions, and you're coming here to change the way they work, and it's like, wait a minute, like that is something like it's really interesting, right?
I think so. I think from what I've seen is, at least from our experience, we've seen that top performers are usually like they actually adopt the idea much faster. But maybe it depends on how we're defining top performer, but usually people who are performing very well are also people who have a growth mindset, right? They're not like, they don't have a fixed mindset. So they're always looking for a new solution, a new tool, a new process. How can I make my job better? How can I make my job faster? How can I achieve my goals quicker? So people who have a growth mindset are going to be faster to adopt, and they may happen to be top performers. If there's someone that's performing really well with their current processes, I mean, good for them, to be honest. And then it's just a matter of our champion or decision maker who brought us on to build better processes to also find a way to guide that person internally and help them adopt the new ideas.
Nice, nice. Maybe I'd like to go over Clay a little bit. First of all, maybe introducing Clay to the audience. Maybe we have people here that don't know what Clay is or the impact of this tool in the market, but like how Clay has impacted your business for your internal operations as well as for your clients as well.
So Clay is, a core part of our business. We always call Clay as the center of our universe. So it is the tool that you can use to ingest data from any current system you have and then send data out of Clay to any system that you have. I usually have a great visual that I share that makes it easier to follow. But yeah, it is that tool that glues everything together, your entire go-to-market strategy together. And it has been very instrumental because without Clay, we would have to be using, a mix of Zapier and other tools and maybe a few hacky solutions to kind of have all of these tools speak together, share data together, be able to manipulate the data and then send it back to our systems of choice. So Clay makes that super easy. To give a tangible example, if I need to get data from Snowflake and also data from Salesforce and put them in one place, I can now ingest that into Clay. I can format the data, manipulate it, filter it inside Clay. And then once I have the data that I need, maybe I want to now send it to an email sequencing tool to send emails to the right people with the right message. So I think it's just like a great orchestration tool. And that's how I would define it. It's been a very good orchestration tool for our customers. And then it's also helped customers consolidate a lot of technologies that they have. So maybe they're paying as individual subscription for data providers, for website de-anonymization solutions, or other automation platforms. And in many cases, we've seen them just actually save a lot of their budget by implementing Clay and consolidating all of these tools.
Nice. What about the weak points of Clay? Like when you're implementing for very large corporation, like an enterprise company, and you have to manage large amounts of CRM records, and like large databases. What are the typical, I don't know, limitations that Clay has, or do you think the tool is suitable for any size of a company, or what is your take on that specific topic?
I think any size of company, definitely, but I think in most cases, you can have a lot of benefits from using Clay. So if you're using it for contact enrichment, you probably don't need to put all of your contacts in bulk right away to enrich them. But I think what you're referring to is kind of let's say role limitations or trying to use, let's say, AI prompts at scale. I think, it might not be a Clay issue right now. It's more about how AI works at scale, I guess, because sometimes we set up prompts and we have really good outputs for the first 10,000 rows or something. And then if you're scaling that to 50,000 rows or more, you start seeing a bit of inconsistencies. I'm honestly not sure if it's a Clay thing or an AI thing at scale, but there's definitely safeguards to put in place. So we always start with a sample of records, let's say, that we enrich, and then we start enriching gradually. If we're doing 50,000 records, 100,000 records, we have a system to avoid manual error. But I would say if you do it any other way, you're going to have a lot more issues, I think. And, we're talking a lot about Clay, but you can use a Clay with a mix of other solutions that can handle big volumes, like Defy, for example, is something that we've been working with. And you can handle, it's called Defy, DIFY. It's a pretty cool solution. So you can use a mix of that and Clay and other solutions to manage big volumes. I think the biggest issue right now, to answer your question, is probably something that Clay is also aware of, which is, it has a steep learning curve. So it's not something that you can just go in today and start you figure things out right away. It does require you to be inside the app day after day, learning, doing trial and error until you figure out what is the best process to set things up. I think they're working a lot on enablement and education right now. But I think that's like the thing that I would highlight.
Awesome. You mentioned DeFi as a strategic tech partner for you guys. What other strategic tech partners do you guys work with that you also recommend other agencies and companies to consider? We are seeing huge hype of N8N as well, even though it's not as we normally track, the searches for Clay and N8N, and Clay seems to be like way higher, but still there is like a important positioning of N8N in the market. Many professionals, including us, are migrating from Make to N8N for multiple reasons. But if you can, take us through the strategic partners. You mentioned Snowflake. Like, what do you do with these tools as well?
I think I personally avoid, recommending the same solutions for everyone. I think every company is gonna need different type of platforms, and is great for automating operational processes, and you can just go so deep into N8N. Our team loves it, for example, for our internal operations. But I think, if I'm thinking as a B2B business, what I need is a CRM, and whether that's Salesforce or HubSpot. Lately, we're like preferring HubSpot. Salesforce is great if you have a complex, record architecture, like account, contact, parent-child relationships, etc. Salesforce definitely like the right solution for that right now. I think we like HubSpot for its like how user-friendly it is and flexible, and people are able to learn how to use HubSpot faster than Salesforce. So I think like having a CRM is very important. And one of these two is a good option. And then having an orchestration solution like Clay is also very important. Having access to, AI platforms like OpenAI, Claude, etc. Also is very essential. And then in terms of integrating N8N, that just makes your processes even more efficient. But I really think you can build a really strong go-to-market strategy with a CRM, Clay, and an email sequencing solution, whether that's Smart Lead, Instantly, or even Outreach and SalesLoft. I would recommend, if you're doing outbound at scale, to go with something like Smart Lead. But a lot of companies we work with are not ready to do that. They want to continue using Outreach and SalesLoft, and maybe they don't even need to go to use Smart Lead and Instantly. So yeah, CRM, Clay, email sequencing tool.
Okay, that's like the three main ones. Do you think that Outreach and SalesLoft are some sort obsolete, or like running behind the latest, deliverability infrastructure required for landing on the primary inbox? Or do you think these like giants are keeping up with the latest, good practices?
Definitely Smart Lead and Instantly are, the number one tools if you're running outbound at scale and you're trying to have the best practices when it comes to deliverability, managing your domain infrastructure, reaching people with personalized messages, and just making that like operation automated through Clay. Right now, if you were to automate your outbound program through Outreach and SalesLoft, it's possible, and we do it for our clients. But right now, they're not integrated in a way where you can do that very smoothly and easily. While if you're doing that with Smart Lead and Instantly, it's already very structured and very easy to do that. In terms of their running behind, I think definitely. Like one of the biggest thing is, some companies love to track open rates. It's just like they love to do that. They like to report that back to their teams, to their board, to their I don't know what. But we know that tracking open rates is actually bad for you, because of how tracking for open rates happens is you're sending a pixel, an invisible pixel through the email that actually tells your email service providers that you're running automated, or you're running like a sales campaign or a marketing campaign. So yeah, like there are things that are already very native to these tools that already hurt deliverability. But I also see a lot of companies having a lot of success with that. So it also depends on your brand, how well your brand is known. Like a platform like Webflow, for example, they're gonna see good results with using Outreach and Sales Loft. It's not gonna hurt them. But it also depends, on the type of brand that you are.
But why do you say that Webflow would get results with any sequencing tool?
Because they have a very good brand reputation. They're less likely to be marked as spam. And not that they wouldn't, if you're being very spammy and you're sending on their behalf, like you will. But I think, they have good brand authority and reputation. And anyway, I think they have like really good processes internally. Shout out to Shika, who's their head of sales dev, who's done an amazing job at, having very targeted and thought through processes on how they send emails, whether inbound or outbound. So I think, tools like that where they have things, pretty tight and neat are going to, it's not like they're going to see the best results using Outreach and Sales Loft. I'm sure if they migrate to something like like Smartlead or Instantly, they might see even better results. But it's not like a huge problem if they are using these tools.
Perfect. So it's not that big of a deal. You can still launch your campaigns.
I mean, I think that maybe some others in the industry will differ, will like have different opinions. I think it's okay. Not everybody needs to drop every single tool that they are using, like, and then move their entire teams to Smartly and Instantly. They're also not very like salespeople friendly, or maybe they are, but they're not very revenue operations friendly. So in Outreach, you can set so many like different permissions for different type of departments and groups and etc. And right now in Smartlead, I don't think you can do that. Anyone can do whatever they want inside the tool, more or less.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'd like to go over some efficiency hacks or tips that you can recommend. We all have heard many people saying, scaling through Clay credits is so expensive. So when I get this alternative tool, like we've heard that before. But at the same time, I believe that the credit system is a great solution for bigger companies that need to, use multiple different providers, but they have to go through compliance and process that could take months. So how much do you support the Clay credit system, especially for bigger companies, and how do you manage to scale efficiently with this status quo that we have?
Yeah, so many things to answer. So on the Clay credits,
I just throw like 5 questions in one. Sorry about that. Not
no
the
worries.
professional interviewer, but learning.
No, you're doing great. So for the Clay credits, I think I can only speak from us being, Clay certified experts and say that, we have processes to not burn through credits quickly. Like we use, whenever we can, API connections that are usually cheaper than using credits. Or, like, I feel like we just don't use that many credits usually. If we're using, data enrichment providers, like, I don't know, Predictly, Datagma, etc., and like the client doesn't have access to those tools, we definitely need to spend credits, and that's fine. One issue I always see, or one like bad practice that I see people using, is everyone's like, okay, I need to use AI for this, and they're building AI prompts and they're spending 3 credits per row, or I don't know how many credits per row to achieve something that they could have done with a formula column in Clay. So
Exactly.
if you want to format, let's say, someone's name, or something very simple, you need to do some sort of data manipulation and formatting. You can use a formula, which is free, instead of going and using an AI enrichment solution. And I see that all the time. People opt for using AI when they just don't need to use it.
Yeah. AI sort of promises higher accuracy sometimes, because of the reasoning. But definitely formulas are still a great resource.
I love formulas.
formula lover. Yeah, I think that sometimes, for example, when you craft hyper-personalized messages at scale, you have to pay for each message. And when you use like a template with, like placeholders and some spin taxes, there's no cost on that. So
Yeah.
that's such a trade-off, to analyze if it's worth it to go to the hyper personalization. Do you guys do hyper personalization, or how do you approach that challenge? Because when the this new technology of hyper personalizing messages came out to the market, of course it was not there yet, but now it has been like over a year since we have the access to this. So how do you guys approach that?
So whenever we're helping a client launch better and more personalized campaigns, we're thinking about relevance first. So is it relevant right now to reach these personas at these companies? And we track that through different, intent signals, or just like information that we know about the company we're helping and when their personas would be more likely to want to hear from them, or on which channel they want to hear from them. That's like what we think about first, is relevance. In terms of personalization, I think, different people or different agencies think about this differently. The way that we do it is we think about AI last. First, we think about the content strategy. What are we trying to say to your personas? And then how do we build a baseline copy or baseline content for the email. And then we think, how do we make this more personalized? How do we make it more relevant? It's not like we're going and using an AI prompt and saying, this is all the information I know about this company and their personas. Come up with something that makes sense. Like, we just don't do that. We build the content first, like you would do it traditionally, and then we find ways to personalize it using Clay. So one example, and using formulas, not AI, is if you want to add social proofing, instead of having AI figure out, who to call out for different industries, you can use a formula that says, if industry equals fintech, then mention, this company. If industry equals healthcare, then mention that company. And then the output of that formula, you take it and you include it as personalization. It's hard to explain in an abstract way right now. Yeah.
It makes sense. It makes total sense. I think it's smart
Yeah.
to leave it for the end of the process, and when you wanted to add some personalization layer to an already relevant message, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, we're on time with the interview, so now it's time for questions. We have 11 participants, so we have some questions. The first one is if the DeFi platform that you suggested is .ai. Nicolas is asking that. Is this the right URL?
Let me check quickly. Yep, that's it.
Perfect. We'll check it out. Fermin is asking, do you set up your own separate email boxes for clients?
If the clients need that, then yeah, we support with that. We set up their cold email infrastructure. Yeah.
Nice. And he's also asking, what are your use cases for DeFi?
Okay, so DeFi is another like big beast, like Clay, I would say. So there's so many different use cases. Right now, we're using it to almost like what you would do with Clay, waterfall different enrichment providers and then build an intelligent scoring model there, and then also personalize emails. And it is like acting as that tool where we ingest a lot of different data from different sources. We orchestrated that there, we build a scoring system there, and then we send that data back to the CRM, to email sequencing tools. So essentially it is very much likely. I think when we use it so that we're able to, like, we don't have limitations sometimes when it comes to columns, rows, enrichment providers, etc. My default is always Clay, but we've been exploring DeFi recently for a specific client, and it's been very helpful. So yeah, just, it's not, I wouldn't say it's like an accessory tool for you to have in your tech stack. It's just, if you're interested in looking into it, it's definitely been useful for us.
Nice. Nicolas is asking, are you using N8N as part of your solution in conjunction with Clay? In which way?
I think that's a good question. I think that we use N8N for a lot of operational things. So if you're launching a cold outbound campaign through a tool like SmartLead, for example, we're using N8N to automate email deliverability reports and just like understanding our domain health, as well as like tracking responses sometimes and like automating the notifications of different systems. I'm pretty sure someone on my team is going to be able to share a lot more interesting use cases on that. But those are like the ones that come to my mind.
Nice. Okay, we have a few more questions. So yeah, we have a little bit of time. What is the main obstacle, pain your B2B customer face when they contact you?
I think everyone has the very similar problems, and this is what we've been seeing so far. Is every single company that comes to us comes thinking that they have a very unique problem that they're trying to solve, but it's usually access to data. So access to the right data. Maybe they are coming and they have like a contract with a specific data providers, and they're not able to diversify their data, and they don't have the right data. A lot of them have just a very bad CRM hygiene. At some point, someone uploaded a list of 22,000 records that they found on like Apollo or something, and it's just very messy and not clean, and they need us to help clean that part. And then also, yeah, just figuring out how to systemize email personalization is also a big challenge that we help companies with. But the biggest problem is everyone's trying to generate more revenue, and they're struggling on figuring out how to do that quicker, faster, and more efficiently.
That's huge. The access to data or like actionable information. We are seeing lots of use cases sending Slack notification to the sales reps channels, with the, as you mentioned, the revenue generating tasks, coming from signals with like context information about the target company's revenue, the size of their team, their potential like calling script as well. Do you have any tips for setting up SOPs and processes? No templates can save loads of time. What is your approach in terms of templates? Thank you for the questions, by the way. They are really good.
Yeah, that's a good question from Fermin. I think what we're doing is usually leaning on Claude to kind of build portfolios for our clients there. And then for like just repeating processes that are very custom to them, we use Claude for that. And then you can set up, some instructions to always be able to build like repeatable processes for our internal SOPs. It's usually like tips for setting them up. Let me think. Basically, you should know your process first. You should know what works and what doesn't, and then just document your processes. And then as you're documenting, you're also gonna find inefficiencies as you document, and you're like, why are we doing it this way? Like we need to be automating this process. And then once you have like your processes mentally figured out and you're documenting them, then you can build them, whether you're leaning on N8N for that or using a mix of Clay and N8N, etc. You're able to build those SOPs.
Okay, thank you, Petra. We have two more questions. Do we have energy to finish up? So the following one is, do you have any tips for setting up SOP? No, that one I already read, sorry. So we have one last question. Do you use waterfall enrichment, emails, numbers as they are, or do you change them or prioritize specific providers in Clay?
I think definitely there are some preferences in terms of the providers, but it depends on the like geography, right? If you're trying to find numbers in the US, it's different if you're trying to find them somewhere in like in Germany, for example. So and that's usually very difficult. So yeah, there are preferences. I would say always go inside Clay, test for yourself. And like I don't really like to say to people what are the best providers, because I also like, if someone's trying to figure this out on their side, to see what works for them first. But if you still need me to give you an answer, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that really depends on the region and the industry as well. So it will alter the order of the providers. Okay, we have the last question, and then we are done for today. Already 49 minutes of session. Do you find that actually most of customers lack proper relevancy with their storytelling and messaging, and are going to market with a poorly, not in-depth fit? Therefore, it's like focusing on the roof of the house and not on the foundation of it first.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Answering the question while asking, but I would agree with that.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of those examples where we've seen also customers that have tried to do automation at scale for outbound. They have like all of the right technologies and processes there, but their content still sounds like you're sending an email in like 2006, and it's very salesy. It's very not relevant. It just, the minute you read the first few words of the first sentence, you're already, tuning off of that conversation. So definitely have seen that repeatedly. And this is what we help companies with, is even if they didn't hire us to help them with their content, we often advise them on their content strategy when it comes to their emails and how they can make it more positioned to start conversations. It's like, stop focusing on getting a meeting booked and a demo booked on that first email. Focus on starting a conversation, and then you're more likely to book that call or that meeting.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for so many insights and learnings from trial and error, hours and hours of work. I am a witness of how much Petra works. She works a lot. We got the opportunity to hang out in New York about a month from now. So great friend. I'm happy to have you. Hope to have you again soon. And thank you everyone for joining today. We're gonna be communicating our next session soon. So yeah, hope to see you in the next one as well. Okay.
Perfect.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye.